The cold, silent corridors of the spaceship felt like a tomb, holding only the faint hum of machinery struggling to keep the vessel intact. Inside one of the small, dimly lit chambers, the alien girl lay still, her once glowing skin now dull, her breath shallow and uneven. She was on the verge of death. Her heart, the core of her being, had begun to fail. With every weak pulse, her life slipped further into the void. Her name was Alara, an alien from a distant planet known for its unmatched beauty and its advanced technology. But none of that mattered now. The life-saving equipment on the ship had malfunctioned, and there was no one left who could save her. Her world, once vibrant and full of energy, had become a silent prison, with no way out. She had heard stories of humans, strange, resourceful creatures, but she never believed their kind would play any role in her survival. Alara's eyes fluttered open for a moment, but the world around her was blurry. The soft beep of her monitor grew quieter with each passing second, and the light that once radiated from her skin dimmed further. She could feel the coldness taking over her body, a creeping sensation that chilled her to the bone. Her hands clenched the sheets beneath her as if hoping to hold on to something, anything that might keep her alive. In the distance, the door to her chamber opened with a soft hiss. Footsteps echoed down the narrow corridor. The sound grew, louder until a shadow appeared in the doorway. It was him, the human she had met only days before. At first, she had dismissed him as just another being from a foreign world, too insignificant to make a difference. But now, as the darkness threatened to swallow her whole, she realized she was wrong. His name was Jack Carter, a man who, by all accounts, should have been far removed from a life-or-death decision like the one unfolding before him. He had never faced anything like this before. His mind raced, trying to process the enormity of the situation, but the words didn't come. How could a human help an alien, especially one from a faraway galaxy, with technology far beyond his understanding? Jack stepped into the room cautiously, his boots making soft thuds on the metal floor. His eyes widened as he saw her, Alara, lying motionless, barely clinging to life. She had been the one who saved him when they crash-landed on her planet, the one who risked everything to help him and his crew. Now, it was his turn to save her. His gaze fell upon her chest, where a faint green light once glowed, a sign of her life force. That glow had faded. The life he had seen in her eyes was almost gone. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he approached her, unsure of what to do. He had never been in a situation like this before. His training hadn't prepared him for the complexity of an alien species, let alone an alien life hanging by a thread. But there was one thing Jack knew for certain. He couldn't let her die. He gently knelt beside her, reaching out with trembling hands to check her pulse. The coldness of her skin startled him, sending a jolt of panic through his veins. His mind flashed back to the moment they had first met. The shock of crash landing, the terror of being stranded on a foreign world with no way home. And yet here he was, facing another life-or-death situation. Jack had always been a man of action, never one to back down in the face of danger. But this was different. He wasn't just fighting to save himself. He was fighting to save someone who had given him hope when he had none left. The thought of losing her made his heart ache, as if something inside him was breaking. He glanced around the room, looking for something, anything that could help. The medical equipment was ancient, a relic of an earlier time, and it had failed them both. Jack cursed under his breath. He had no idea how to use the alien technology that surrounded him. How could he even begin to fix something so complex, so foreign to his understanding? But there was no time to waste. He had to act. He had to do something. For Alara. He placed his hand on her chest, just above where the fading light still flickered. His fingers trembled as he closed his eyes, thinking back to all the things he had learned about the alien species during his brief time with them. He remembered the stories the crew had told about the healing powers of their technology, the way they could manipulate energy to restore life. But he had never seen it done. He didn't know how it worked. "Come on, Alara," he whispered under his breath. His voice broke with the weight of the words. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not like this. He stood up quickly and began to search the room once more. His eyes scanned the walls, looking for any indication of a control panel or emergency system. Then something caught his eye. An old, dusty panel in the corner. It seemed out of place, tucked away as if it hadn't been used in years. Jack rushed over to it, his heart hammering in his chest. He could feel Alara's life slipping away with every passing second. He had to do something. Anything. He ripped open the panel and found a series of buttons, each labeled in an alien language he couldn't understand. Panic surged through him as he searched for something familiar. And then his finger brushed against a button that seemed to glow faintly, like it was calling to him. Without thinking, he pressed it. The entire room hummed to life, and Jack watched, in awe as the lights above flickered on. The energy in the room shifted, and for the first time he felt a spark of hope. But would it be enough to save her? Would he be able to restart her heart before it was too late? The clock was ticking. Jack's heart raced as the room buzzed with newfound energy, the hum of machinery finally coming to life after what felt like an eternity of silence. But even as the lights flickered above, his hope was short-lived. He had activated something, but was it the right thing? Was this enough to save Alara? The alien girl lay motionless, her body cold, her chest barely rising with each shallow breath. Jack's hands trembled as he crouched down beside her once more, his mind a blur of confusion and fear. The green light that had once glowed from her chest had faded to a mere flicker, struggling to keep its existence. Her pulse was weak, almost non-existent. "Please, Alara. Don't leave me now," Jack whispered, his voice cracking as the weight of the situation sank in. He felt helpless, utterly powerless in the face of this alien technology and her fragile life. She had been his savior when they first crash-landed on her planet, offering him hope and a chance at survival. Now, here he was, standing on the precipice of losing her, and he had no idea how to save her. Jack stood up quickly, pacing the small chamber in frustration. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his mind raced for a solution. Every part of him screamed that he had to find a way, but how? What could he possibly do? His fingers hovered over the controls of the alien equipment, the glowing symbols mocking him with their complexity. He understood none of it. The world outside the chamber was no better. The ship, once a marvel of advanced technology, now seemed like a dilapidated husk, a shell of its former glory. Systems had failed. Communications were down, and Jack had no way of knowing if anyone would ever come to their rescue. It was just him and Alara, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on him like 1,000 tons. His mind wandered back to the days before this all began, back to the crash landing, back to when they had met. Alara had been his guide, showing him kindness when he was a stranger on her world. She had risked her life to help him, to teach him the ways of her people. She had given him the strength to push forward when all seemed lost, and now here he was at the mercy of an alien world, trying to return that favor. Jack ran his hands through his hair, pacing faster now. His breathing grew heavier with each step. There has to be something. I can't lose her. I can't let her die. But the more he thought about it, the more it became clear. He didn't know enough. He didn't have the knowledge or the tools. All he had was a desperate will to save her. But was that enough? Was hope enough? Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind, something Alara had said to him when they first met. It had seemed insignificant at the time, but now it felt like a lifeline. She had spoken about the power of the heart, how it wasn't just a symbol of life, but a conduit for energy. She had mentioned how her people could transfer their life force, using it to heal, to restore, to survive. It was an ancient technique, one that had been passed down through generations, a sacred act of connection. Jack's pulse quickened as the idea began to form in his mind. Could this be the key? Could he, a human, connect with Alara in this way? He didn't know the details of the process, but if there was even the slightest chance that he could use his life force to help her, he had to try. Without wasting another second, Jack rushed to the control panel once more. His hands moved frantically as he pressed a series of buttons, hoping to find something that would help. The ship's ancient systems hummed in response, the lights flickering again, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he noticed a faint, blue glow emanating from the console, a symbol he had never seen before, but something about it felt right. He pressed it. The room suddenly filled with a surge of energy. Jack stumbled back, almost knocked off his feet by the force of it. The air seemed to crackle, and for a moment, he thought he might be dreaming. The alien technology responded to his touch, the walls vibrating as if alive, as if the ship itself were aware of the stakes. Jack rushed back to Alara's side. He could feel the energy coursing through him, a strange warmth spreading through his chest, as if something inside him were awakening. He placed his hands on her chest once more, just above her heart. He closed his eyes, focusing on the energy that was now coursing through the room. It was intense, but Jack felt it. He felt the pull. It was like a tug at his very soul. A connection that defied all reason. He pressed harder, forcing himself to focus. "Come on, Alara, please." With all the strength he could muster, Jack allowed the energy to flow from him into her, willing his life force to merge with hers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a faint pulse, then another, and another. The heart that had been still for so long began to beat again, slowly at first, but steadily gaining strength. Jack held his breath, watching in awe as the green light on Alara's chest flickered back to life. It wasn't just the light. It was her. Her heartbeat was returning. She was coming back. But it wasn't over yet. The room was still charged with energy, and Jack's own body felt the strain. He could feel his own strength slipping away with every passing second, but he couldn't stop now. He had to keep going. For her. As he focused all his energy on saving her, the feeling of being connected to Alara grew stronger, more intense. He could feel her life force inside of him, and for the first time he understood the true power of the bond they shared. It wasn't just a connection. It was something deeper, something that transcended species, distance, and even death itself. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the room fell silent. The hum of energy died down. Jack opened his eyes, his hands still pressed against Alara's chest. Her breathing had stabilized, and the once faint glow from her heart was now steady, strong, and vibrant. She was alive. Jack let out a shaky breath, collapsing beside her, exhausted but relieved. He had done it. Against all odds, he had saved her. But as he looked at her, her eyes fluttering open, he knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Something neither of them could have ever imagined. Jack sat back on his heels, eyes glued to Alara, his chest heaving as he tried to steady his breath. The room was still humming with energy, a soft, pulsing glow from the alien technology that now filled the air. The pulse of her heart, once so faint, had stabilized, but Jack knew that it wasn't over yet. Alara was still unconscious, still on the edge of death. Her body was weak, her alien physiology struggling to recover from the toll her failing heart had taken. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands still trembling. The energy transfer had been successful, but it hadn't fixed everything. She was alive, yes, but she wasn't out of danger. The alien technology that had been keeping her alive was unstable, and the ship's systems, now barely functional, were a far cry from the advanced medical equipment she needed. He glanced around the room, eyes searching for something, anything that could help. The dim, flickering lights only illuminated the sharp contours of alien consoles and faintly glowing panels, but they offered no solutions. Jack's mind raced, desperately searching for a way to keep Alara alive long enough for help to arrive. But there was no time. Time was running out. "Alara," he whispered, leaning over her, brushing her hair back from her face. The faint pulse of her heart was reassuring, but it wasn't enough. She had to wake up. She had to fight, but she wasn't waking up. Jack's frustration boiled over, and he stood up, pacing back and forth. How had everything gone so wrong so fast? What kind of cruel twist of fate had brought him here, on this foreign world, to face the impossible task of saving an alien with no knowledge of her species, no way to understand her body, and no idea how to fix it? The ship creaked under the strain, its ancient frame groaning as if it too had given up. The systems were failing. Jack could feel it in the pit of his stomach. If Ilara didn't wake up soon, if her body didn't stabilize completely, they would both be trapped on this dying ship, stranded in the middle of nowhere, and he would be the one responsible for her death. Think, Jack. Think, he muttered to himself, pacing faster now. The options were limited. He had already used up whatever reserves of energy the ship had to offer. What could he do now? His mind flashed back to the brief conversation they'd had when they first met. Ilara had spoken of a hidden alien artifact, one that had been passed down through generations, a power source that could revive even the most critically injured. It was an ancient relic, hidden deep within the ship's core, a place only the highest-ranking members of her species could reach. But Jack, just a human, didn't have access to those kinds of places. Unless he could somehow unlock the ship's ancient systems and find this artifact himself. The thought made his stomach turn. He wasn't qualified for this. He wasn't even close. But Ilara was counting on him. He couldn't just sit here waiting for fate to take its course. He had to try. He walked over to the control panel, his fingers hovering over the interface. The symbols on the screen were unfamiliar, alien to his senses, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. He had to press on. He had to trust his instincts. There were a dozen buttons, each glowing faintly, some flashing in an almost rhythmic pattern. Jack pressed one of them, the screen flickering for a moment before revealing a map of the ship's internal systems. His eyes scanned it quickly, locking onto a symbol that seemed to match the description Ilara had given him. Artifact location. His pulse quickened. This was it. This was what he had been searching for. But as he reached for the next button, a warning flashed across the screen. Access denied. Security protocol activated. Jack cursed under his breath. Of course. How could it be this easy? The map had taken him as far as the ship's security systems would allow. To get any further, he would need to bypass the security codes. Codes that no human should have access to. Jack glanced back at Ilara. She was still unconscious, her breathing steady but shallow. The pressure of time was pressing down on him. He could feel the weight of the ship's failing systems, the desperate ticking of the clock. He wasn't sure how much longer Ilara's body would hold out. His eyes turned back to the control panel, and a thought struck him. What if I could trick the system? He remembered a trick from his own days in the military, an old method of bypassing security systems by using a simple code pattern to simulate a higher clearance. It was risky, and it wasn't guaranteed to work, but he had no other choice. Without thinking, Jack quickly began to input a series of codes. His fingers flew across the panel, a blur of movement. He wasn't sure if this would work, but it was his only shot. A few tense moments passed, and then nothing. His heart sank. But then, just as he was about to give up, the panel buzzed to life. A new message appeared. Security protocol override. Access granted. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. The system had accepted the fake code. He had done it. He quickly accessed the next part of the map, which now highlighted a hidden compartment deep within the ship, beyond the main corridors. The artifact was located there, hidden away, waiting to be discovered. With a rush of adrenaline, Jack sprinted toward the entrance to the ship's deepest chambers. His mind raced. If I can just get to the artifact, if I can just make it in time. But as he reached the door to the core chamber, a sudden tremor shook the ship. The lights flickered violently, and the walls groaned under the pressure. Jack stumbled forward, barely keeping his balance. The ship was deteriorating faster than he had anticipated. He couldn't afford to waste any more time. I'm coming, Ilara. Jack muttered under his breath as he stepped into the darkened hallway. leading to the chamber. The air felt colder now and the silence was almost suffocating, but he couldn't stop now. The ship trembled violently as Jack pushed open the heavy metal door, his heart pounding in his chest. Every step seemed to echo in the eerie silence, as if the entire vessel was holding its breath. The deeper he went into the ship's heart, the more unstable the environment became. Flickering lights cast haunting shadows against the cold metal walls, and the humming of the machinery seemed weaker with every passing moment. He was running out of time. Jack's legs burned from the sprint, his breath coming in short gasps. His mind raced, but there was no room for doubt now. Alara's life depended on him, and he couldn't afford to fail. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. Ahead of him lay the chamber that housed the artifact, a small circular room filled with strange alien technology. The air smelled faintly of metal and ozone, and the walls glowed with a dim, pulsing light. In the center of the room was the artifact, a small crystalline object resting upon a pedestal. It glowed with an otherworldly energy, its brilliance almost blinding in its intensity. Jack's fingers trembled as he approached it, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. He reached out and touched the artifact. The moment his fingers made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his body. It felt as if his very soul was being pulled into the object, and for a brief, dizzying second he was overwhelmed by the power that flowed through him. His vision blurred and he stumbled back, barely able to catch himself. But there was no time to waste. He had to get back to Alara. The artifact was the key. It was the lifeline they both needed, the one thing that could restore her fully, heal her broken body and bring her back from the edge of death. But there was a catch. As Jack understood it from the ancient texts he had glimpsed earlier, the artifact required a sacrifice. A life had to be given in exchange for the healing power it bestowed. And in that moment, Jack realized what the true cost would be. He looked down at the artifact in his hand, his chest tightening as the implications hit him. If he used it, it would save Alara, but it would take his life in return. There was no other way. The sacrifice was not just a choice. It was a requirement. Jack stood there, frozen for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His mind flashed to all the moments he had shared with Alara, the quiet conversations, the laughter, the shared hope they had kindled in the face of overwhelming odds. He had never expected to care so deeply for someone from another world, someone so different from him. But in the short time they had known each other, they had forged a bond stronger than anything he had ever known. I can't leave her alone, Jack thought. She's the only one who's ever truly made me feel alive again. She deserves a chance. She deserves to live. A rush of emotions surged through him: fear, love, regret, hope. But one feeling stood above all the rest: determination. He would not let her die. Not now, not ever. If this was the price he had to pay, then so be it. His life was a small price to give for hers. After all, he had already given her his heart, his hope. He could give her his life too. With a deep breath, Jack turned and ran back through the hallways of the ship, the artifact clutched tightly in his hand. As he moved, the ship's shaking intensified, the walls groaning under the strain of its failing systems. The power was quickly draining, and Jack knew that if he didn't act now, Alara would be lost forever. He reached the medical chamber and rushed to her side, still unconscious, her fragile body barely clinging to life. The green light in her chest flickered weakly, threatening to fade. Jack's hand shook as he placed the artifact over her heart. The moment the artifact touched her chest, a surge of energy burst forth, a brilliant light filling the room and enveloping them both. Jack gasped as the power of the artifact coursed through him, filling every fiber of his being. His vision blurred, and the world seemed to spin around him. The light was overwhelming, and for a moment he thought he might lose himself in it. But he held on. He had to. For Alara, the energy from the artifact transferred into Alara, her body glowing with the same light. Slowly, her breathing steadied, and the faint pulse of her heart grew stronger. Jack watched in awe as the light around her began to fade, replaced by a warm, golden glow. She was coming back to life, but Jack's own body was beginning to betray him. The energy of the artifact was draining him, sapping his strength. His legs wobbled and he collapsed beside her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His heart was pounding, but it was no use. The artifact had done its work. Ilara was healing, but for Jack, it was too late. As the light around them faded, Jack's vision dimmed. He reached out weakly, taking Ilara's hand in his. Her eyes fluttered open and she looked at him, confusion and gratitude in her gaze. She tried to speak, but Jack's strength was fading too fast. He smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "I saved you," he managed, his grip tightening around her hand. "It was worth it." Ilara's eyes filled with tears as she realized what had happened. She understood the sacrifice he had made. She wanted to say something to thank him, but her voice caught in her throat. She couldn't speak. Not yet. With one last breath, Jack closed his eyes, his body succumbing to the toll of the artifact's power. His final thought was of Ilara, alive, safe, and free to continue her journey. That was all that mattered. And as his world went dark, Ilara whispered his name, her voice filled with sorrow and gratitude, knowing that Jack had given everything to save her. She would never forget the human who had risked everything for her, the one who had sacrificed his life so that she could live. As the ship's systems began to stabilize and the stars outside the windows began to shine once more, Ilara promised herself that she would honor Jack's sacrifice for as long as she lived. And for the first time in days, she truly believed that the future might still hold hope.